The headlights of my rental car cut through the darkness as I pulled into the gravel driveway of my childhood home in rural Kentucky. 3 years. It had been 3 years since I'd set foot on this property. 3 years since my father's voice cracked with rage as he told me I was no longer his daughter. The familiar ache settled in my chest as I stared at the weathered farmhouse, its paint peeling and porch sagging more than I remembered. I killed the engine and sat in the suffocating silence, my hands still gripping the steering wheel. Through the living room window, I could see the blue glow of the television and my father's silhouette in his old recliner. Mom had called me crying 2 weeks ago, her voice barely a whisper as she told me about his diagnosis. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer. 6 months, maybe less. She begged me to come home, to try one more time to bridge the chasm that had torn our family apart. "He's stubborn as a mule, Elena," she had said, using the nickname only she was allowed to use. "But he's dying, honey. Whatever happened between you two, whatever he said about your choices, time's running out. My choices." That's what she called my decision to join the Air Force, to dedicate my life to serving my country in ways I could never fully explain to them. What started as a young woman's desire to prove herself had evolved into something far more complex, far more classified. 10 years of service had taken me to places that didn't exist on any map, involved me in operations that would never make the evening news. I'd earned my stripes in the shadows, climbing ranks in a world where trust was currency and secrets were survival. The front door opened, and Mom stepped onto the porch, her small frame wrapped in an old cardigan despite the August heat. Even in the dim porch light, I could see how much she'd aged. Her once dark hair was now silver, and worry lines had etched themselves deep around her eyes. She raised her hand tentatively, as if unsure whether I'd actually get out of the car or drive away like I had in her nightmares. I forced myself to move, my military training kicking in to override the emotional paralysis. One foot in front of the other. The gravel crunched beneath my boots as I walked toward her, each step feeling like I was crossing a minefield. She met me halfway, her arms wrapping around me with a desperation that made my throat tight. "I wasn't sure you'd really come," she whispered against my shoulder, and I could feel her tears soaking through my shirt. "I'm here, Mom," I managed, though my voice sounded foreign to my own ears. She pulled back to look at me, her hands cupping my face like she used to when I was small and had scraped my knee. "You look good, honey. Strong, but tired." I was tired. Bone-deep, soul-weary tired from carrying burdens I couldn't share, from living a life where every relationship was complicated by the weight of classified clearances and need-to-know protocols. But seeing her face, seeing how much she'd needed me to come home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. I felt like someone's daughter again. "Is he?" I started to ask, glancing toward the house. Mom followed my gaze and sighed. "He knows you're here. Saw your headlights from the window. But Elena, you need to understand how he's been these past few months. The treatments, the pain medication, the reality of what's happening to him. It's made him even more set in his ways." We stood there in the humid Kentucky night, crickets chirping in the tobacco fields that stretched beyond the property line, the same fields where I used to run as a child, dreaming of adventure beyond the county borders. Dad had always said those dreams would lead me nowhere good. Turns out he was partially right. They'd led me places I couldn't talk about, to a life he couldn't understand or accept. "What exactly did you tell him about why I'm here?" I asked, dreading the answer. "The truth, that you're on leave and wanted to see him." She paused, wringing her hands. "He said some things, honey. Hurtful things about how you only came back because you heard he was dying, like you were waiting for him to be weak enough to face." The words hit like a physical blow, but I'd learned to compartmentalize pain years ago. It was a survival skill in my line of work. "Maybe he's not entirely wrong," I admitted quietly. "I don't know if I would have had the courage to come back if things were different." Mom's expression softened with understanding. "Your father's pride has always been his biggest weakness. When you left for basic training, when you chose the military over staying here and taking over the farm, he took it as a personal rejection. Then when you stopped calling, stopped writing, I tried, Mom. For the first 2 years, I tried. But every conversation ended the same way. Him telling me I was wasting my life, that I was playing soldier instead of being a real woman, finding a good man and settling down. The old anger bubbled up, familiar and bitter. And when I got promoted, when I tried to share something I was proud of, he'd just change the subject or make some comment about how the military was no place for his daughter. She nodded sadly. I know, sweetheart. I tried to make him understand, but you know how he is about women in combat roles. His generation, his experiences, they shaped him in ways that are hard to change. What Mom didn't know, what neither of them could know, was that my role had evolved far beyond anything they could imagine. I wasn't just another Air Force officer. My clearance level put me in rooms where decisions were made that affected national security. I'd spent the last 5 years working joint operations with agencies that most people only saw in movies. The irony wasn't lost on me. The daughter he'd rejected for choosing military service had become someone whose work directly protected families like ours, people who slept safely in small Kentucky towns because of operations they'd never hear about. A light flickered on in the upstairs bedroom, and I knew he was moving around up there, probably trying to decide whether to acknowledge my presence or pretend I hadn't come at all. The man who'd taught me to drive his old pickup truck, who'd sat through every school play and graduation ceremony, was now a stranger separated by years of silence and stubborn pride. "Elena, there's something else," Mom said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. She glanced nervously toward the house, then back to me. "He's been getting calls, strange calls, men asking questions about you, about your work. It started about 2 months ago, right after his diagnosis became public knowledge around town. My blood turned to ice. What kind of questions? They claimed to be from some veterans organization, wanting to honor local service members, but the questions were specific. About your deployments, your rank, where you've been stationed. Your father hung up on them every time, but Elena, they kept calling. Different voices, but always the same types of questions. Every instinct I'd honed over years of classified operations screamed danger. My cover wasn't supposed to be blown. My family was supposed to be protected by layers of operational security that made them invisible to anyone who might want to use them as leverage against me. Yet here they were, being targeted by people fishing for information about my work. "Mom, this is important. Did Dad tell anyone in town about these calls? You know your father. He mentioned it to Sheriff Bradley when they were at the diner last week. Said he was getting tired of people bothering him about his soldier daughter when he was trying to focus on his treatments. Sheriff Bradley. I remembered him as a decent man, but small-town law enforcement wasn't equipped to handle the kind of threats that might be circling my family. If someone was probing for information about my operations, it meant either there was a leak in my unit or someone had connected dots they shouldn't have been able to connect. Has anyone else been around asking questions? Neighbors, strangers in town, anyone unusual?" Mom's brow furrowed as she thought. "Well, there was that nice young man who came by last week. Said he was writing a story for the county newspaper about local heroes. He seemed to know an awful lot about you already, though. Knew about your commendations. Knew you'd been overseas multiple times. I thought maybe the Air Force had sent him information, but when I mentioned it to your father, he got angry and said he hadn't given permission for anyone to write about you." My hands unconsciously moved to my phone, muscle memory from years of needing to report security breaches immediately. But who could I call? My handler was expecting me to be on family leave, unreachable except for genuine emergencies. And what would I tell him? That my dying father was getting suspicious phone calls? That some reporter was asking questions in a town where nothing newsworthy had happened since the tobacco auction closed 15 years ago? "Mom, I need you to listen to me very carefully," I said, taking her hands in mine. "If anyone else comes around asking questions about me, don't talk to them. Don't give them any information, no matter how official they seem or how harmless the questions appear. And if they call again, hang up immediately and call me." She searched my face, and I could see the moment when she realized this wasn't just military paranoia. Her daughter's homecoming had brought something dangerous to their quiet corner of Kentucky, something that made the worry lines around her eyes deepen with a new kind of fear. "Elena, what kind of work do you really do?" The question hung in the humid night air between us, and I felt the familiar weight of a decade's worth of classified secrets pressing against my chest. Mom's eyes searched mine, looking for the daughter she'd raised, trying to reconcile that girl with the woman who'd just turned a simple homecoming into a security briefing. "I can't tell you that, Mom," I said finally, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "I wish I could, but I can't." Before she could respond, the front door slammed open with enough force to rattle the screen door in its frame. Dad stood silhouetted against the living room light, his once powerful frame now gaunt from months of treatment, but his presence still commanding. Even cancer couldn't diminish the authority in his voice when he spoke. Well, well, the prodigal daughter returns. His words were slurred slightly, whether from pain medication or the bourbon I could smell from 10 feet away. I couldn't tell. Heard you were out there conspiring with your mother. James, please, Mom whispered, but he ignored her. 3 years, Rebecca. 3 years of silence. And now she shows up when I'm dying. Convenient timing, don't you think? He stepped onto the porch, his gait unsteady but determined. Up close, I could see how much the disease had ravaged him. The man who'd once thrown hay bales like they weighed nothing now struggled to stand without gripping the porch railing. Dad, I came because you heard I was weak enough to forgive you? He laughed bitterly. Because you thought dying would make me soft on your choices. The accusation stung because there was truth in it. I had waited until he was vulnerable, until Mom's desperation had finally outweighed my own pride. But standing there, seeing the pain etched in every line of his face, I realized something else was happening. The suspicious calls, the probing questions, the timing of everything. It wasn't coincidence. Dad, those phone calls you've been getting, I started, but he cut me off. Oh, so now you're interested in what happens to us, now that it might affect your precious career? His voice rose, and I could see neighbors' lights flickering on across the rural road. You want to know about those calls? Fine. Let me tell you about the nice men who keep asking about my daughter, the war hero. James, lower your voice, Mom pleaded, glancing nervously at the surrounding houses. Why? Ashamed of what she's become? What she's brought to our door? He pointed an accusatory finger at me. You think I'm stupid, Rebecca? You think I don't know that good daughters don't get mysterious phone calls from people who won't give their real names? You think I don't realize that whatever you're really doing over there has followed you home? His words hit closer to the truth than he could possibly know. Someone had connected my family to my work, had identified them as potential leverage points. The timing of his diagnosis becoming public knowledge, the sudden interest from supposed reporters and veterans organizations. It was too coordinated to be random. You're right, I said quietly, the admission feeling like swallowing glass. You're right about all of it. Dad's anger faltered for a moment, surprise flickering across his weathered features. He'd expected denial, defensiveness, the same pattern of arguments that had driven us apart 3 years ago. I came back because I was scared, I continued. Scared you'd die hating me, scared I'd waited too long to fix this. And yes, my work has followed me home. The calls you've been getting, the questions, they're connected to what I do. Mom gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth, while Dad's expression shifted from anger to something I couldn't quite read. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the distant hum of cicadas and the rumble of a truck passing on the county road. What kind of work? Dad's voice was quieter now, but there was steel beneath the exhaustion. What kind of work puts your family in danger, Rebecca? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed against my hip. The ringtone wasn't my usual one. It was the secure line, the one that only 3 people in the world had access to. My blood ran cold as I recognized the pattern of vibrations. Emergency protocol. Level 1 priority. I have to take this, I said, already moving toward my rental car where I'd left my encrypted communication device. Like hell you do, Dad snapped, grabbing my wrist with surprising strength. You just admitted that your job has put us in some kind of danger, and now you're going to walk away to take a phone call. Dad, please. This could be about keeping you safe. I gently but firmly removed his hand from my wrist, years of combat training making the movement automatic. Give me 5 minutes. I jogged to the car, my heart hammering as I retrieved the secure phone from its hiding place beneath the spare tire. The caller ID showed only a series of numbers I recognized as my handler's emergency contact. Phoenix Actual, I answered, using my operational call sign. Phoenix, we have a problem. Agent Martinez's voice was tight with urgency. Your family's location has been compromised. We're tracking at least 3 vehicles that have entered your operational area in the past 2 hours. Unknown hostiles, likely foreign intelligence. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. How is that possible? My family was supposed to be protected by operational security protocols. Someone leaked your real identity, Phoenix. We're still investigating how, but right now that's secondary. You need to extract your family immediately. We have assets en route, but they're 20 minutes out. Through the car window, I could see Mom and Dad on the porch, their silhouettes backlit by the living room light. They looked so small, so vulnerable. Dad was leaning heavily against the railing now, the confrontation having drained what little energy the cancer had left him. Negative on extraction, I said, my training taking over. My father is terminal, on heavy medication. He can't be moved quickly, and any attempt to relocate them will likely kill him faster than whatever's coming. Phoenix, you don't understand. These aren't just intelligence gatherers. We intercepted communications suggesting this is a termination operation. They're not here to kidnap your family for leverage. They're here to eliminate them as a message to you. The phone slipped in my sweaty palm. Everything I'd worked for, every mission I'd completed successfully, every life I'd saved in the shadows. It all meant nothing if I couldn't protect the two people who'd given me life. How long do we have? Based on their current position in the rural roads, maybe 15 minutes before they reach your location. Phoenix, there's something else. The leak didn't come from our end. Someone in your family's community has been feeding information to these people for weeks. I closed my eyes, the pieces finally clicking into place. The phone calls, the reporter, the questions around town. Someone local had been gathering intelligence, building a profile, waiting for the perfect moment when I'd be emotionally vulnerable and operationally isolated. Send me everything you have on those vehicles, I said, already formulating a plan. And Martinez, tell the assets to come in hot. Understood, Phoenix. Data incoming. And Rebecca? Martinez's voice softened slightly. Your father was right to be suspicious. The leak is coming from someone who's been watching your family for months. Someone with regular access to local information. Sheriff Bradley's deputy, Tom Morrison, has gambling debts to some very dangerous people. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Morrison had been 3 years behind me in high school, had dated my cousin Jenny, had eaten Sunday dinner at our kitchen table more times than I could count. The idea that someone from our own community had sold out my family made my stomach churn with a rage I hadn't felt since my first combat deployment. I need weapons, I said, scanning the dark landscape around our property. The old farmhouse sat on 40 acres, mostly open fields with a few outbuildings and a barn about 200 yards from the main house. Defensible, but only if I had the right equipment. Check your rental car's trunk. We had assets place a care package there when you stopped for gas in Louisville. I popped the trunk and found a black duffel bag I definitely hadn't packed. Inside were items that made my heart rate steady for the first time since the call began. Tactical vest, night vision goggles, combat knife, and my personal favorite, a modified M4 carbine with enough ammunition to hold off a small army. Phoenix, vehicles are now 12 minutes out. 3 black SUVs, probably 6 to 8 hostiles total. Professional-grade equipment. Military training. I shouldered the duffel and jogged back toward the house, where Mom and Dad were still on the porch, their argument having shifted to worried whispers about my behavior. The sight of me approaching with military gear made Dad straighten despite his pain. "What the hell is that?" he demanded, pointing at the rifle now slung across my shoulder. "Dad, Mom, we need to get inside right now," I said, my voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed in life-or-death situations. "We have maybe 10 minutes before some very bad people arrive here looking for me." Mom's face went white. "Elena, what are you talking about?" "The phone calls, the questions around town. Someone's been gathering information about our family to use against me. They're not coming to talk." I guided them toward the front door, my eyes constantly scanning the tree line for movement. "Dad, I know you hate what I do, but right now my training is the only thing that's going to keep you and Mom alive." Dad's expression shifted from anger to something I'd never seen before. Fear. Not for himself, but for Mom. For me. "How many are coming?" 6 to 8. Probably more. I locked the front door behind us and immediately began moving furniture to barricade the windows. "Dad, where do you keep your hunting rifles?" "Gun safe in the basement. Combination is Mom's birthday." He was already moving, his illness forgotten in the face of immediate danger. "Rebecca, what kind of work do you really do that brings killers to our front door?" I paused in dragging the heavy oak dining table toward the living room window. For 10 years I'd carried the weight of classified operations, unable to share the burden with the people who'd raised me. Now with death approaching our doorstep, the truth seemed like the least I owed them. "I hunt the people who hunt Americans, Dad. I stop threats before they become headlines. And apparently, I've been too good at my job." The sound of gravel crunching under heavy tires cut through the night air like a death knell. I peered through a gap in the curtains and saw the first set of headlights turning into our driveway, followed by 2 more vehicles. They moved with tactical precision, spacing themselves to cover all escape routes from the house. "They're here," I whispered, checking the magazine in my rifle. Dad had retrieved his old hunting rifles from the basement, his hands surprisingly steady as he loaded shells with the muscle memory of decades. Mom crouched behind the kitchen counter, clutching the cordless phone like a lifeline. "Should I call 911? She asked, her voice barely audible. "They won't get here in time," I replied, watching as dark figures emerged from the SUVs. 8 men, moving like a coordinated unit, spreading out to surround the house. Professional killers, just as Martinez had warned. Besides, Deputy Morrison would probably intercept any calls and redirect the response. The first shots came without warning, shattering the living room windows in an explosion of glass and wood splinters. I dove to cover Dad as he struggled to get behind the overturned dining table, his weakened body unable to move as quickly as his mind demanded. "Stay down," I shouted, returning fire through the broken window. My first burst caught one of the attackers in the chest, dropping him immediately. The others scattered, taking positions behind their vehicles and the old oak trees that lined our driveway. Dad's hunting rifle cracked beside me, the heavy .30-06 round punching through the engine block of the nearest SUV. "Still remember how to shoot," he grunted, working the bolt action with practiced efficiency. "Where did you learn to do that?" I asked, impressed despite our desperate situation. "Vietnam, 1969. Didn't think I'd ever need those skills again." Another shot, another hit. "Guess your old man's got some secrets too." The attackers regrouped, laying down suppressing fire that forced us to keep our heads down. I could hear them communicating in what sounded like Russian, coordinating their assault. They were preparing to breach the house, probably planning to come through multiple entry points simultaneously. My secure phone buzzed against my chest. "Phoenix, assets are 2 minutes out. Can you hold?" "We're pinned down but holding," I replied, reloading quickly. "Tell them to come in from the north field behind the barn." Suddenly, the gunfire stopped. An eerie silence settled over the property, broken only by Dad's labored breathing and the distant sound of approaching helicopters. The attackers had heard it too. They were running out of time. "Elena," a voice called from outside, heavily accented. "We know you are in there. Send out the girl, and the old people live." "Like hell," Dad muttered, chambering another round. The helicopters were getting closer, their rotors beating like thunder in the Kentucky night. But the attackers weren't retreating. They were making one final desperate push. I heard the back door splinter as someone kicked it in, while others prepared to storm through the front. "Here they come," I whispered, flicking my rifle to full auto. "Whatever happens, I love you both." Dad reached over and squeezed my shoulder with surprising strength. "I'm proud of you, soldier. Always have been." Then the house erupted in chaos, as death came calling from every direction. The world exploded into violence as the attackers breached from 3 directions simultaneously. I pivoted toward the kitchen as the first figure burst through the back door, my rifle chattering as I put 2 rounds center mass. He dropped hard, his weapon clattering across Mom's linoleum floor. Dad's hunting rifle boomed beside me, the massive .30-06 round punching through the front door and taking down another attacker before he could fully enter. "Got him!" Dad shouted, his voice carrying a fierce satisfaction I hadn't heard in years, but there were too many of them. A third man came through the living room window, rolling behind the couch as I laid down covering fire. I heard Mom scream from the kitchen as another figure appeared at the side window, and I realized we were about to be overwhelmed. That's when the night sky erupted in brilliant white light. The military helicopter descended like an avenging angel, its searchlight turning our property into daylight, and its door gunner opening up with a .50 caliber machine gun that made the house shake. The remaining attackers outside were caught in the open, their tactical advantage evaporating under the withering fire from above. "Phoenix, this is Black Hawk 7, crackled through my earpiece. "We have eyes on remaining hostiles inside the structure." The man behind our couch made a desperate break for the front door, but Dad's rifle spoke again, and the threat ended there. The house fell silent, except for the thunderous rotor wash from the helicopter, now hovering directly overhead. "Clear!" I shouted, my voice hoarse from the cordite smoke filling our living room. The helicopter settled onto our front lawn, its rotors still spinning as tactical teams poured out. Within minutes, Our property was swarming with federal agents securing the scene and checking for additional threats. Dad slumped against the overturned dining table, his rifle still clutched in his hands, breathing heavily, but alive. Mom emerged from the kitchen, shaken but unharmed, tears streaming down her face as she rushed to embrace both of us. "Is it over?" she whispered against my shoulder. "It's over, Mom." Agent Martinez appeared in our doorway, stepping carefully over the debris. "Phoenix, we've secured the area. Deputy Morrison is in custody, and we've rolled up his entire network. Your family is safe." Dad looked up at Martinez, then at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and understanding I'd never seen before. "So, this is what you really do," he said quietly. "This is why you couldn't come home." I knelt beside him, taking his weathered hand in mine. "I couldn't tell you, Dad. I wanted to, but I know, soldier. I know." He squeezed my hand with what strength he had left. "Your mother and I, we've been living in a safe little bubble because people like you stand guard in the darkness. I was too proud, too stubborn to see it." The helicopter's engines began winding down, and I could hear the tactical teams coordinating cleanup operations outside. Our quiet Kentucky farmhouse would never be the same, but something else had changed too. The chasm between my father and me had finally been bridged by shared danger and mutual respect. "I'm sorry it took this long," I said, my voice breaking slightly. Dad smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in years. "Welcome home, daughter. Welcome home. You know, almost nobody subscribes to the channel, and I get it. Life's busy, so many notifications, so many things demanding our attention. But if this story touched something in you, made you think about your own family, those unspoken words, that stubborn pride that keeps us apart, maybe it's because you need to hear more stories like this. Stories that remind us what really matters before it's too late. Subscribing is free. It's literally the only help I need from you. And who knows, the next story I tell might be exactly the one you need to hear at just the right moment in your life. Hit subscribe, because sometimes stories find us when we need them most. See you in the next one.